Hello again, children. I'm talking about Star Wars. It is a great time to be a fan of Star Wars. We are in this era now where there will be a new Star Wars film every year. There is so much coming out. Disney is profiting from this in a really fantastic way. You can see the little birdie singing along with me. I wanted to do something where I'm not, so I've been inspired because I've been watching, I've been reading all the theories, talking with some friends, and I'm like, I just want to sit up here and talk about this myself. So just talking about Star Wars is what I've been doing as of late, and I'm going to continue to do it. And at least for today, what I wanted to talk about was I was thinking of. And so Claudia Gray is now one of the writers who's writing new canon novels for Star Wars. And there's been a lot of back and forth about what this means, and Disney has said, okay, once Disney overtook Star Wars, they're really taking, well, so far I appreciate what they're doing, honestly. I think they know they're going to milk this, and they are going to get tons of money, and that's fine. You know why? Because thus far they've been looking for that talent and putting their trust in people to, do certain things, do what they want. And I'm sure there's going to be a time where they come down and say, no, we want it done this way, but so far they are hiring the right people. They are trusting in Lucasfilm and Kathleen Kennedy, and I can't say enough how friggin' cool it is that she's in charge. Watching the behind the scenes stuff for The Force Awakens, how she herself said we had to become students of Star Wars. I think that's so fantastic, and I loved that George Lucas himself elected her to, be his successor. I thought that was super cool, because I like when she talks about that, remembering, she said, when I sat down with George, I thought he was going to want me to suggest some names. And he's like, no, I want you to do it, which I think is fantastic. Woo! Girl power. So, I mean, just in and of itself, and the fact that when I'm watching the behind the scenes stuff, I can see that she had a hand in everything, almost every, at least that's what it looked like. And I'm very impressed by J.J. Abrams as well. He did so much work. He really did champion everything. There's all these, and again, I know that all of that stuff is cut a certain way, but nonetheless, he was there keeping things together and always championing stuff. The little speeches that he gave when people were done, like for Harrison Ford when he was done filming, for Daisy Ridley and John Boyega, all those little things. And for John Williams, there's always this point at which he would stop and just really get everybody to recognize, and it really was kind of like his show, but he really was the coach on, on set for everybody, and championing everything. And I thought that was impressive. And also for Kathleen Kennedy, there wasn't a point at which I didn't ever see her involved in whatever it is they were doing on a day-to-day basis. And I also thought that's awesome. She's that's how it should be. And they had said how they were always kind of trying to balance out what they thought would be good. What I wanted to talk about was how the new canon and the comics and the novels, and I myself am I'm not reading the comics currently, but I am trying to read the novels as much as I can. I absolutely adored Lost Stars by Claudia Gray, and I mentioned her previously, but and for her, she wrote a story that kind of went across various, she covered a huge chunk of time in that novel, and she incorporated so many things brilliantly, and it felt like I'm reading within the Star Wars galaxy. And she made you care about original characters that she came up with. What? That's crazy. It's really hard, I think, to do that in a book, especially, never mind in a film. And we had, so now moving on to, in a few days' time, her novel about Leia specifically, and it's about her, what she's doing, and it's set 6 years before The Force Awakens, the novel titled Bloodline. And I'm really interested to see, I mean, there's already been some spoilers online, because some people got it early and all this stuff like that. The few tidbits that I've learned, however, and today I read a fantastic theory on this, and there's all these theories about episode 8 right now, of course, but I read a fantastic theory that kind of tied into what events we found out in Bloodline. And I'll just say this right now, going forward, any and all spoilers, yeah, I'm gonna say them, so I'm not gonna give a signal. I don't really care, and I don't really know that a lot of people are gonna watch me anyway, so I'm just gonna talk about spoilers, just so you know. Specifically for that, they were talking about how Ben Solo, or Kylo Ren, did not turn to the dark side until, like, right before then. That would make him about 23. So I thought that was interesting because a lot of people had theorized that it happened earlier, like he was a teenager or something. And they're like, all right, how does this fit into the timeline? And then with the very popular theory now of Rey possibly being part of Luke's academy before it was destroyed, what does that look like? I read a fantastic, again, I keep bringing this up and I've yet to actually spit it out, but I read a fantastic theory by the user, again, and this is, will discredit me a bit if saying where I found this in the bowels of Tumblr. Where else would you find these kinds of things? But I guess it's better than Reddit, or about the same. I don't know. I don't use Reddit. As far as credibility goes. However, it was a fantastic theory, especially concerning Ben, concerning that timeline of when he would have turned, and concerning specifically if Rey had been part of the Academy. But there's another theory going around right now that Rey may be a reincarnation of Anakin Skywalker, which, can I just say right now, I hope that's not true. That sounds terrible. What I could buy into is if she is a reincarnation of the Chosen One. So this is what somebody else had said, and this I just found anywhere, is that specifically when the Force gets thrown so out of balance that the Chosen One will kind of emerge. And for her specifically, she's a reincarnation of what Anakin was previously, meaning she's like a virgin Force birth. Fine. Okay. I really hope they don't do that, just because we hated that so very much in the prequels, the midi-chlorians. Like, everybody thought that was bullshit, and I hope they don't do that. It sounds stupid, but and what I really, really hope is that if they are going to do this, that she's not specifically a reincarnation of Anakin Skywalker, because I think that's ridiculous and stupid. If it's a reincarnation of specifically the Chosen One in that prophecy, I could buy that. I could go along with that. I'm all right with that. Would I like the natural birth of the Force? Maybe, but it's not something I mean, personally, my favorite theory right now, even though this is also equally a stretch, is that she's a Kenobi. But that would be equally as hard to, I think, show in film, because you'd have to get audiences that are not as familiar to buy into that lineage and show us that backstory. And you could probably do it, but it might be, it could be as difficult as it is to get us to buy into this reincarnation theory, although, you know, all you have to do is have Luke have a talk with her, a meaningful talk, and we'll see what comes of it. So I you know, again, if it's the reincarnation thing, again, I'm okay with the Chosen One, not specifically that it has anything to do with Anakin Skywalker. Please, no. That would be horrendous and stupid, if you ask me. It just doesn't make sense. It's tacky, it's silly, and just, it's like a good way to kind of avoid the father thing, and like, actually, it's just, no, it's lazy, I think. Again, the Chosen, I think that, you know, it's, the whole thing is lazy, personally, but I think, specifically, if it's the Chosen One prophecy, all right, fine, I'll buy into that. So that being said, if Rey is then as powerful, conjecturing from that, the fact that Luke, you know, there was again the prophecy knowing that this girl had potential, very, very high potential for power, and if that's true, then she has power for the dark side. And perhaps he had a vision of her destroying everything, or thinking that that's what that could lead to, and that's what led him to send her away. And then, and this is going back to this theory that I had found on Tumblr. The username is Star Wars Nonsense. I want to give them credit. It was a really actually great theory that not only took in what we had learned from Bloodline so far. And again, they're just tidbits. I've yet to read the book. I can't wait till it comes in the mail. And also this reincarnation theory. But what I liked about it is that, so tie those two together, and more than that is that Luke will get eventually a future vision of a girl approaching him on Act 2, or however you pronounce that, but the planet at which Luke has isolated himself to. And so, well, that was kind of the end of the theory, but the beginning of it was that, you know, he sends her away, hides her away on Jakku, and then Ben finds out, and he's really upset because they almost had a way of like relating to one another because the other students kind of feared him. He had that family history. We know that Snoke had been whispering sweet nothings into his ear all his life, so there's this potential for dark side and light side and confusion, and maybe the other students were afraid of him and he's afraid of what powers he has and he feels abandoned and all those things. So he's already in a delicate spot, as we know, and that's why he's training with Luke. Leia had sent him away. And there's all sorts of wonderful in-depth conversations about what that looked like as well, and I'm just kind of skimming over it. But basically, okay, so he's at that point where he's feeling kind of disillusioned already, and then he learns of this girl where it's almost a similar situation where he could relate to that so much power inside and what to do with it, and people fearing or confusion or whatever. And then so then he gets very angry hearing upon that his uncle took this girl away, like, because he relates to her. And then not unlike how Anakin felt very disillusioned with the Jedi Order, not just because of Padme and all of that, but if you look at the Clone Wars TV show, which I absolutely love that they put this in here, it's just one more reason to understand why he felt like he turned and he felt betrayed by the Jedi and thought that they were evil in the end, is that, not just losing Padme or that thought of losing her, but also Ahsoka specifically. Again, now I'm getting all into this stuff, which if, you guys, whoever, I feel like, so that's the other thing. Do I stop and explain who these characters are? I don't think I should, or I have to. If you don't know, look up Ahsoka Tano and you'll find a whole lot of knowledge. But beware, because there could be spoilers if you ever feel like watching the Clone Wars or Star Wars Rebels. Excellent shows. Moving on, but I think, so going back to that disillusionment for Anakin with Ahsoka, when she left the Jedi Order, because they didn't stand behind her when she was wrongfully accused in Clone Wars, and she left, and he felt so betrayed and disillusioned. And I think that's a similar kind of disillusionment that this theory is proposing with Ben, in the fact that Luke took Rey away, and he's like, no, this isn't the right thing to do. And he's like, all right, all that stuff that Snoke has been feeding me is correct. And then that's when he decides. And then for this theory specifically, to work out that timeline, what I thought was great is that he says, or she says, that so he already made up his mind that the people around him are liars and that Snoke is the one who's right. So he just sits there and bides his time for the next few years, making everybody think that he's, kind of on the path to the light. And then when Luke leaves and I can't remember the reason why Luke is supposedly leaving, that's when he just flips and everything comes to, fruition, as we know what happened based on the events of The Force Awakens. And then and then Luke comes back only to realize that it's too late, everything's been destroyed. And Lorsan Tekka, and now I might be getting the character's name wrong. I know when I look at it on the paper, I know what it looks like, which is really terrible. But Mox had, so Ben was slowly biding his time. Luke comes back to see everything be destroyed, and he realizes he made a huge mistake, and he's saying, oh, I have to go get Rey back. But then there's this thought that he has a future vision showing Rey finding him on Act 2 at the end of The Force Awakens as we see it, and that she's presenting him with a lightsaber. And then so he's like, okay, there was this misreading of a prophecy of a future Force vision, whatever happened. So he waits and then he goes, hides out there. But yeah, instead of going to, because he realizes he made a grave mistake in hiding her there, because Ben kind of, he could relate to her, the fact that she's extremely powerful. And it ties in not just like what I liked about the series, it ties in not only what we learned about Bloodline, what we learned from Bloodline, but this reincarnation theory, as well as the possible theory that Ben Solo was in fact the person who, well, people were saying that he dropped her off on Jakku because he spared her life, but this is a different one where Luke in fact threw her, hid her away there, thinking that it just wiped her mind, thinking that she's going to turn into something evil with all the power that she has, fearing that. And then I think there was more to it than him just fearing that, but there was like, maybe he saw something that made him believe that would happen as well. He didn't just like completely callously do it, but he was afraid that she would ruin everything that he had built. And then Ben, that did not sit well with Ben, and became disillusioned, not unlike the way Anakin did, as I was talking about. And then ruined everything, which I really like this theory. I think it's excellent. It kind of ties together everything that everybody's been talking about recently. It's great.